Hard to say if public sector is slower than private sector. I think that in the last 2 years, the pace of change in the public sector has been very rapid. I mean, when speaking to legislators and appropriators, which I've been doing for a number of years now, suddenly, 3 years ago, we were trying to explain what language models were, and then a year and a half ago, they started asking about hyperparameter tuning. So it was just like really rapid change in people's understanding and interest in these systems. I think the thing that, I'll just go back to the procurement challenge. I think if you look at the pace of innovation in this technology, it's about every 6 months you get a new turn of the crank on these models. Or if you look at like a procurement cycle in the DoD, for example, where they're palming 2 or 3 years out, you've got you do the business case in 25 and then you're palming for 27, and you've got to somehow bridge that gap. That's just too long. So I think the rate at which the technology is advancing is much faster than the rate at which many of the procurement processes, which were set up for buying tanks or boots or whatever, that don't have the same pace of innovation. I think there's a lot of work happening, whether it's ATO reciprocity or providing various ways to do bridge funding to get around these lengthy procurement cycles. I think that's maybe the biggest challenge. And I think as far as the state of POCs or whatever we're in right now, I think that it really is about incentives. When people have a job to be done and AI is useful and they have the right incentives to change the way that they work, then the adoption can be really, really fast. And I think there's lots of re-architecting of the way that people work, and that takes time. So I certainly think that the narrative around it, I live in Silicon Valley, the narrative is just, as a lifelong techno-optimist, I find it exhausting, sort of the narrative around AI right now. But I think that, we're sort of I like the self-driving car analogy. It's like 10 years ago, self-driving cars were right around the corner, and there was all this money piling into self-driving cars, and a lot of those companies didn't succeed. But now, 9-10 years later, we have cars driving around in San Francisco. So I think the transformation over maybe even the 5-year period is going to be profound, but the narrative is definitely out over its skis right now.